Phantom Zone. Okay, Dev, it is your week. What would you like to nominate to enter the Phantom Zone?
I'd like to nominate, let's see here, movies that take licenses and make movies that have nothing to do with the actual license.
Yes. Okay. Keep going.
You just deemed the whole video game movie franchise thing.
Yeah. Like, for example, the latest Borderlands is an example of it.
Yeah.
Where directors want to make a movie, but they know their concept by itself won't sell, so they'll attach a license to it to garner more interest.
Yeah.
And in the same time, alienating the existing fans or the franchise.
Yeah, like for me, probably the biggest examples of this is the original Super Mario Brothers movie, but also the Dolph Lundgren the Dolph Lundgren Masters of the Universe movie, which is just radically different than the show it was based on.
Yeah, I don't need to make any more arguments. I said what I said.
There's got to be more. We can dig into this. I'll almost go as far to say is there's got to be something where it's a good example. So like,
okay, another good example of it would be, basically taking it's basically any video game movie, and most books, there's some book adaptations that I can't really think of at the moment. There's one specific one. You know what? I'm going to be controversial. Ready Player One.
I don't know what it's based on, but you say
that's sort of game, but it's proper.
That was a book.
Yeah, so it's just something that takes the source material and makes something radically different.
Yeah.
Oh, God,
there's got to be like this. Like Lord of the Rings is technically licensed by, Lord of the.
Yeah, but no. So Lord of the Rings.
The Rings of Power.
No, Rings of Power, I wouldn't say is a good example of it, because even though they've shuffled stuff up, it's not what I would say if they did that is if they took Lord of the Rings and they set it in modern day New York, and it's like, I've got to get the One Ring Frodo, right? And that's his like girlfriend. Sam is now his girlfriend. That would be something that's radically different. When you say this, I don't think it can just be, oh well, we've made an original story with the same characters. Because
then it's got to be some stuff like wacky stuff.
Because like if you look at the Super Mario Brothers movie, which
it turned into Blade Runner.
Yeah, exactly. They took the Mushroom Kingdom and a giant lizard that steals a princess, and they were like, "Well, the Mario Brothers, they're plumbers in New York." And then like Dennis Hopper is now Bowser, and you have the guy with the giant shoulder. Yeah. And like the Goombas were giants and they didn't look like Goombas. It was a completely different concept. It didn't relate to it at all.
Oh, David, you're gonna kick yourself for this.
Yeah, go
the
on.
Original TMNT comics and the 80s show.
No, that's not the example.
It's vastly different because it was meant to be very serious.
Original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comic.
The tone is
the Mirage comics are like really, really, really dark.
Yeah.
Okay, let me show you. Look, this is the originals, and you'll just see that it is the same thing. It doesn't matter, like a tonal shift to make something more marketable. I'd say
David in the 80s show, Master Splinter, after he got kicked out from the school, he came and lived in a sewer. That's his whole backstory. He moved to New York and lived in a sewer before he even found the canister. They gave no explanation.
Okay, but Cap, the alternative was
the same thing.
The alternative was Splinter was a pet rat who learned Kung Fu.
I'm okay with that one. That at least has an explanation.
Okay, I'm going to very quickly. I'm going to ask Copilot again here. Copilot's been misbehaving a lot.
It much makes more sense for a rat to know kung fu than a grown man suddenly decides that he's going to live in a sewer.
You can probably hear me typing now. It's like my ASMR typing. Source material. Okay, let's see what it comes up with. Movies based on licenses that are nothing like the source material. This is shit. Every example they've given is close. The first one it gives is The Wizard of Oz. No. Then it says Shrek. It says it expands it. I said nothing like. See, damn AI doesn't have understanding of movies.
I would say like How to Train Your Dragon. Like there are a bunch of like fairy tale. I mean, like even Disney's movies in general. I would say the Brother Grimm tales and the Disney counterparts are not at all faithful to the source material.
Yeah, I'd say
the only ones I can think of are good. That's the problem.
Like Cap, you mentioned Resident Evil. Cap, you mentioned Resident Evil, and I'd say arguably the first one is kind of like a different telling of the same sort of story. The first Resident Evil live action movie is still set in a mansion. There's still like an underground laboratory, still causes zombies. They add in a liquor, but it's got otherwise different characters. But when they made it, they were like, well, Alice is Jill. This other guy, Matt, whatever, is meant to be Chris. This other guy is Wesker, right? And so it had these analogs to them. When they did the sequel, they were like, right, we're bringing in actual Jill. We've got actual Nemesis, and we're doing stuff
actual
that's from the
Claire,
games.
actual Chris, actual Leon.
Hang on, but after that, they were like, do you know what? Like, we're just going to set it in a desert world that somehow the whole world is now a desert, and it was radically different. So I would say that's a relatively good example where they just crowbar in characters, but the characters are very different.
I don't know what, how is the backlash for this? Because like these are movies happening while I was a kid, Resident Evil movies. Like, how are you guys reacting to the Resident Evil movies? Like right now, as a grown dude.
So the one thing I remember specifically when it was coming out, where there was a popular song at the time as well. It was like, Alice, Alice, who the fuck is Alice? That became the theme of the fucking movie. That became the movie of the movie.
Right,
I would say like because like I imagine like this is something that right now would create so much videos and anger reviews. That franchise wouldn't even exist in this current modern period. It's like because people would shit it in the internet and no one would go see it. They would even spread the word.
You know, the funny thing with Resident Evil, though, is the first one had that scene where there was like the lasers in the corridor, and then they put that laser corridor into Resident Evil 4 after the film had come out first.
Yeah.
So, like the first one, they specifically said that it's not going to be the same as the games because they want it to be a surprise, and so you don't know all of who the characters are. And that way you didn't know who was going to be good or who was going to be bad and stuff like this. Because if you remember the first one, it turned out that Alice was like a double agent and lost her memory and stuff like this herself. But after that, they were like...
She was a weirdly, like, even though she was Jill, I felt like she had a red dress, I think, like in the first one, right? She kind of reminded me of Ada more than Joe did.
Well, they probably combined elements because Ada obviously was a double agent as well.
Yeah.
They combined elements to create these characters. But then after that, people were like, yeah, why don't you give us the actual characters? And then they started doing it. But clearly
they killed them off. And they killed them off.
I know. Go on, Dev.
I've never played the games. Did they ever add Alice into the games?
No, they've never added Alice into the game. In the movie, they've got like a little girl computer, like a hologram called the Red Queen. And they do add a version of that into one of the games called the Dark Side Chronicles or Umbrella Chronicles. Mm-hmm. There's been 2 or 3 things from the movies, the live action movies, that they then later add into the games. But they've never added a version of Alice. Although, actually, this said, even though they've never added Alice, at the end of I think it's at the end of the second movie, she gets these powers. So she just looks at a camera and a guy's eyes start to bleed and stuff like this. That's a little bit like the character Alexia Ashford from Resident Evil Code Veronica. So ultimately, you could say the closest in the games to Alice would be the character Alexia, who was a villain, whereas obviously Alice is.
I would say, like, although I would say this, before I even played the games, I know a friend who was a massive Resident Evil guy, the movie guy. He loved the whole franchise of it. Alice was his like Wonder Woman in a sense. He was so happy about it. Then I played the games and like, oh my god, these films are shit. I was completely dunking on this whole child.
Yeah. You know what? Actually, just because we've kind of gone off point here, are we in agreement with Dev that movies that radically are different than the source material, where they get the franchise just to connect it to a shitty
then
movie?
the Disney movie would go. I can't agree to that.
So you're saying no, Dev? Are you sticking with your idea? Or
I'm sticking with it.
I'm sticking with it too. Into the Phantom Zone.
You just banned all the Disney stuff, and most of the animated stuffs were based on children's books.
No, that doesn't count. That doesn't count.
Like bad ones, Cap.
No,
Okay.
no, I don't think you said bad ones specifically, but I wouldn't say that.
Okay, let's go.
And make it different.
Redo.
That's not the same. That's not the same.
Use the bad
everything gets in the hole. Everything in the hole.
Buying the Little Mermaid or Cinderella, I'd say, because they were like public domain stories and that, they just did their own interpretation. It's not the same as, like you mentioned, like Borderlands, where you get like a 20-year-old character and have it played by Jamie Lee Curtis, and then you combine these characters and do stuff like that, and it's just something very different.